So I'm not going to read the introduction, but I encourage you to read it. It's a common introduction to all these suttas on jhana. But I'll cover most of what's in there in the sutta. This sutta is called the Anapanasati Sutta, or the ending fabrications one after another. And in this sutta, it's similar to the Anapanasati Sutta, where the Buddha uses awakened monks as an example of how to practice the Dhamma. It's usually the Anapanasati Sutta it's a misunderstood and misapplied sutta, which is usually presented simply in reference to the title, meaning it's usually presented as a teaching on a specific type of meditation, where it's simply not. It's a description of right meditation within the framework of the Eightfold Path and how to apply that to different themes of the Dhamma. In this sutta, the Buddha uses Sariputta as an example of a more focused application relating to meditation and how to incorporate right meditation into your Dhamma, and how to avoid the common adaptations, accommodations, and embellishments that were even common during the Buddha's time. And that'll become more clear as we go along. On one occasion, the Buddha was staying in Savatthi at Jita's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. He addressed those gathered. Friends, Venerable Sariputta is wise. Sariputta is of great, deep, and penetrating discernment. For 2 weeks, Sariputta, secluded from sensuality and from unskillful mental qualities, gained profound insight into unskillful mental qualities, one after another. Sariputta came to the Buddha after a long period of studying with in the same environment and with some of the same teachers that Siddhartha studied with prior to his awakening. He came to the Buddha, he listened to his teachings, and in the course of this initial 2 weeks, he awakened. That's what the Buddha is referring to. Sariputta entered and remained in the first jhana. This first jhana is characterized by rapture born of seclusion. It is accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. So the first jhana, jhana means, the word jhana refers to meditation, and the levels of jhana just simply means ever deepening levels of meditative absorption or ever deepening levels of concentration. This first jhana is something we all experience as soon as we begin our meditation practice, if we're using the right method. We withdraw ourselves from the world, we find a place of seclusion, however that might be, and we become mindful of our breath. And in that mindfulness of our breath, the initial stage of the foundations of mindfulness, we simply take pleasure in that seclusion, in that disentanglement from the world. That's the first jhana. The reason why I'm emphasizing that is there's nothing magical or mystical or unattainable about any one of these levels of concentration, although they're often taught that way, especially in modern Buddhism. It was always presented to me, the word jhana was always presented to me as something that is only reserved for special types of meditators of great skill and devotion, etc., etc. And one of the reasons why the Buddha taught many suttas on jhana is just to belay that myth that was common even during the Buddhist time. These are just ordinary levels of ever-deepening concentration that's experienced within the extraordinary practice of the Eightfold Path and Shamatha Vipassana meditation, but experienced by every meditator. So the first jhana, and another reason why the Buddha teaches this and why I'm teaching this over 9 or 10 classes is the importance of recognizing that our meditation practice is actually bearing fruit by recognizing these ever-deepening levels of concentration. The Buddha continues, the qualities present in the first jhana, directed thought, evaluation, rapture, pleasure, concentration, contact, feeling, perception, intention, consciousness, desire, decision, persistence, mindfulness, equanimity, and attention were recognized one after another. This is the only sutta where the Buddha goes into this elaborate description of different mental qualities. But the importance there is that each and every one of these are qualities that we may be averse to or grasping after. And the importance here is to recognize that they're all impermanent mental qualities, mental states that are commonly recognized as fabricated one after another. The Buddha is using Sariputta as the example of doing this. Is that clear? So the point is that none of these qualities, whether it might seem something that we want to cling to and establish, are simply to recognize as what's occurring during a meditation practice. Because the importance of meditation is not to realize some quality and make it fixed in our experience, but simply to come back to the sensation of breathing, to deepen concentration. Yes?
Am I right in thinking that the list of words of thoughts that you've just described, it's correct to recognize them, but not establish yourself in them, in as much as, like we were talking about meditation sometimes, you have your breath up here and your thoughts are down here. It's just a thought, but it's not something, and to recognize the thought as being, it's just the current thought that you're having. It's impermanent, like a lot of thoughts. And so you don't get latched onto it. You just recognize that I'm having that thought.
Yes.
Or I'm having that feeling. And okay, that's happening. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Without elaborating on it at all. Yeah. Through analysis, through aversion, through connecting it to something else. Persistence was mentioned here. So you could, that's one of the factors of awakening. Isn't that wonderful how I'm doing it? We could get lost. And it's good to recognize these things. In fact, persistence is something to be cultivated, but not during a meditation practice. Whatever is occurring, whatever is arising, come back to the sensation of breathing. And in that way, we're using meditation properly to deepen concentration and not use it as it is commonly used as a contemplation practice. And contemplation is not meditation, is it? At least as the Buddha teaches.
Right. So, but what we do on our cushion, we take off our cushion. So, do these thoughts that you've just read through, and there's some more to come, do you use those thoughts in the same way off the cushion in your day-to-day life?
Yes, simply as recognizing that's what is occurring right now, and to not create any specialness or aversion, over any of it, and getting back to how the Buddha started the description of the first jhana is simply rapture born of seclusion, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. And so this extended list is part of that. Is part of what would occur during directed thought and evaluation. So directed thought initially is just the direction that I'm giving myself to come to meditation and be mindful of my breath. And then the evaluation that almost every one of us falls into is maybe directly related to meditation. I'm doing it right and I'm becoming the world's most wonderful meditator, or I can't do this, it's just too difficult, or am I doing it right? Am I missing something? Am I connected to all of that is part of the evaluation. Come back to the sensation of breathing. And then these other subcategories. Am I in consciousness? Am I persistent? That's all part of directed thought and evaluation too. So they're just examples of that in meditation, simply recognize that they're part of the first jhana, and as we deepen our concentration, they will fall away, one after another. But if we cling to them, the reference to one after another is from Sariputta's developed meditation and deepening concentration. He doesn't get hung up or stuck in any one of them. He recognizes and abandons them one after another, keeps coming back to the sensation of breathing. And that leads to ever deepening concentration. So is that clear? So even off our cushion, something might occur that brings one of these characteristics, desire. I'm just picking one out of the list. And so it's important to recognize that maybe I'm craving after that third piece of chocolate cake. Relating it to a well-concentrated mind now, I don't lose my mind over getting that third piece of chocolate cake. I remember through my well-concentrated mind that 2 is enough, or 1 is enough. And I simply move into the next thought, which has nothing to do with the third piece of chocolate cake. I've now gained control of my thinking, my mind, haven't I? In a very realistic and purposeful way, meaningful way. That really, and using a somewhat silly example, but maybe not if we're addicted to chocolate cake. It's not all that silly, is it? But, pardon me?
We're always addicted.
Yeah, to something. And we're really addicted to our thoughts, ultimately. It's a good example of how this works in a practical way through concentration. And these other qualities could arise and pass away as well. So some of these qualities, equanimity, persistence, mindfulness, intention, those are all skillful qualities to have in relation to Dhamma practice, unless we attach ourselves to them, because they're all impermanent states.
Yeah.
Including, like, I'm the most, I used to have a joke with it. I won't get into the whole thing. Teaching at, well, he was a sponsee of mine in the 12-step program. And one of the qualities you want to develop is humbleness. And he said, how do I know if I'm humble? I said, well, I know that I'm the most humble person there is in the world. I mean, it's just so we can become enamored with how wonderful we are developing these qualities. They're just temporary states. The singular quality, the most important quality to develop, as the Buddha teaches in these suttas on jhana, is ever deepening concentration. And because we're focused on, if we're engaging in the entire Eightfold Path, we're focused on different themes of the Dhamma, such as equanimity or diminishing desire. We can become attached to them if we don't have the proper framework. And that's really the reference here. So in the first jhana, as we begin our meditation practice, we will find that there is directed thought and evaluation. We're putting a value judgment on things that are occurring in our mind. I mean, hopefully in a right meditation, the Buddha only taught sitting meditation. What I'm referring to is there's other things called meditation, such as walking meditation, or even to be meditating while you're shopping. It's not meditation, but we can assign certain qualities there to recognize that they're simply grasping after and clinging to. In a sitting practice, the only thing that we should be addressing or dealing with is our thoughts. That's why we sit quietly in whatever position we're comfortable with, become mindful of the sensation of breathing, and feelings and thoughts as it relates to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The beginning of that, feelings and thoughts arise and pass away. One after another, we recognize that and come back to the sensation of breathing. That's the first jhana. And so then off our cushion, we have the mindfulness and the concentration to not be distracted by the third piece of chocolate cake, or the new car, or that argument I just had, or anything else that's occurring in our moment-by-moment life. Let me go back just to keep it in context. The qualities present in the first jhana: directed thought, evaluation, rapture, pleasure, concentration, contact, feeling, perception, intention, consciousness, desire, decision, persistence, mindfulness, equanimity, and attention were all recognized one after another. I'm going to skip my commentary there. Sariputta, wise, of great, deep, and penetrating discernment, clearly saw the arising, the establishment, and the passing away of these mental qualities present in the first jhana. The arising, the establishment, which could be just a brief acknowledgement of them, and the passing away. You're on to your next thought, right? Or your next reference, anyway. He noticed how these qualities arose, came into play, and vanished. Having entered in the first jhana, again, a description of it, rapture born of seclusion, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation, Sariputta remained free of attraction or aversion in regard to any of these qualities. Now he's describing Sariputta from his accomplished awakened point of view, quality of mind now.
Can you just read that
Yes.
last 2 sentences again, please?
Sariputta, wise, of great, deep, and penetrating discernment, clearly saw the arising, the establishment, and the passing away of these mental qualities present in the first jhana. He noticed how these qualities arose, came into play, and vanished. It's also an incredibly profound teaching on impermanence, isn't it? In fact, it really gets to the heart of the nature of impermanence, is that the thoughts that we are so enamored with and that we have fabricated in the hopes of creating a permanent self are all impermanent, like foam on the water.
Fabrication.
Yep. And that's another description of these jhanas, are fabricated levels of thought until we get to the fourth. He noticed how these qualities arose, came into play, and vanished. Is that what you were?
Something else after that, I feel like.
Having entered in the first jhana, rapture born of seclusion and accompanied by directed thought and evaluation, Sariputta remained free of attraction or aversion in regards to these qualities.
So it's the directed thought part that I was like, he was experiencing directed thought, rapture, but he wasn't clinging to that experience.
Yeah, so let's describe rapture in this sense.
Right.
So rapture, the best description, and again, rapture is a word that a particular translator, who I value great, Thanissaro Bhikkhu, used to describe the Pali word using an English word. And there's not always a perfect, in fact, there's very rarely a perfect correlation. So a best description in this case would be joyful engagement with. So we are joyfully engaged in the first jhana, in the pleasure of seclusion, simply a disentanglement from the world. And I would bet every one of us, even if we find meditation difficult and boring, there's some pleasure in just simply sitting quietly. And in that first jhana, there is directed thought and evaluation. And directed thought doesn't necessarily mean conscious thought. It's often conditioned and fabricated thought, but it's still directed. It still has a focus towards something. And the result of that is we start placing value judgments on what's occurring. And it might even just be evaluating our breath, especially people that have had severe trauma have difficulty just being mindful of their breath because of I won't get into the whole physiological association with that, but just because of that. So they start judging their breath and they have difficulty with that. But it could be anything that arises. A very good point to bring up. Sariputta remained independent, detached, released, dissociated, and free of any barriers arising from attraction or aversion. Any barriers from attraction or aversion to any of these qualities. So again, the description, some of these qualities are things that we want to abandon in our Dhamma practice, and some of them are qualities that we want to cultivate. But in meditation, if we go either way, it's going to be a barrier towards deepening concentration. And this is such such an important point, that we use meditation for deepening concentration. The skillful qualities that develop otherwise are developed through integrating the Eightfold, integrating and living within the framework of the Eightfold Path, guided by right speech, right action, and right livelihood.
And you have to be concentrated on all those things.
Exactly, yes. And a mind that is distracted and prone to ignoring its own ignorance will never be able to fully develop or even find the usefulness in true right speech, right action, and right livelihood. That's a mind that will become compulsive about social engagement and dismiss actual Dhamma practice. That's the problem with modern engaged Buddhism. Much of it is geared towards my right speech, but your speech sucks.
How good I am at right speech.
Or my actions are the only pure actions, and all of and your act. And whether that's right or wrong, whether your actions might be very compassionate and the antagonists to your actions are demonstrably immoral, just to make it's still taking that view that I'm right and you're wrong is rooted in conceit, isn't it? So there's no right or wrong moral judgment there. It's the quality of mind that engagement is resting in. Is that clear?
Because there's attachment there.
There's attachment there. And again, think of the example of the most peaceful human being that ever lived, the Buddha. That's how he was engaged in the world. I often say it this way: the most loving thing I can do for myself and for all of the other sentient beings, human beings, is to take to the Dhamma and awaken, because then I know that my behavior is free of any contributions to the world's suffering. That is the most profound effect any human being can have, isn't it? And then from that example, as the Buddha was during his time, we can be true bodhisattvas, as the Buddha described himself prior to his awakening. Let's get back to it's always great discussion. Again, I'm going to skip over my comment here. The Buddha continues. Having entered into the first jhana, Sariputta understood there is deeper concentration. How did he understand that? Because he had already heard not the entire Dhamma. He heard the description of the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. So he knew he hadn't yet reached that deepest level of concentration that is unwavering. Having entered into the first jhana, Sariputta understood there is deeper concentration. He pursued this path and realized deeper concentration. Again, the Buddha is using Sariputta as a description of how an awakened person develops jhana. Sariputta, secluded from sensuality and from unskillful mental qualities, with the stilling of directed thoughts and evaluation, entered or remained in the second jhana. This second jhana is characterized as rapture and pleasure born of concentration. So think of the natural progression of our own meditation practice. We leave our busy day behind, and we come and we sit in meditation. We take pleasure of that initial seclusion. And as we continue our meditation practice, and it's probably just in the next moment or two, that our concentration starts deepening, and we take pleasure in that experience of ever deepening concentration. And in the next moment, we might be caught back in our thoughts again. But because we're engaging in right meditation, we recognize that, come back to the sensation of breathing. We're establishing the second jhana. The Buddha continues, the mind united in the body. The whole purpose of the Buddha's Dhamma, you could say, is that. A mind united in the body. And this is the second jhana. We've all experienced that in every meditation session. I should make that blanket statement. In nearly every meditation session we've ever had. And there's no time frame that the Buddha puts on any of this notice. And I never come across anywhere else where the Buddha puts a length of time on any aspect of meditation, or certainly these levels of meditative absorption. Recognizing that rapture, that joyful engagement with concentration, free of directed thought and evaluation in this moment, is the second jhana. Nothing extraordinary there, is there? We've all experienced it. The reason why, again, I'm emphasizing this is to recognize that your meditation practice is bearing the fruit that it should bear, that it's working. You're deepening your own concentration. The mind united in the body, free of directed thought and evaluation, an internal assurance or an internal poise. We now know from the visceral experience of deepening concentration that it works. There's an internal assurance. We know it. It's so important to recognize that. Again, this is that line there is one of the reasons why the Buddha would teach jhana and why I am. To recognize that it's working, that you're bearing the fruit, you're having the benefit of your practice. The qualities present in the second jhana, internal assurance, directed thought, evaluation, rapture, pleasure, concentration, contact, feeling, perception, intention, consciousness, desire, decision, persistence, mindfulness, equanimity, and attention were recognized one after another. In other words, no clinging to any of it. Sariputta, wise, of great, deep, and penetrating discernment, clearly saw the arising, the establishment, and the passing away of these mental qualities present in the second jhana. He noticed how these qualities arose, came into play, and vanished. Having entered in the second jhana, rapture born of concentration, free from directed thought and evaluation, Sariputta remained free of attraction or aversion in regard to these qualities. He remained independent, detached, released, dissociated, and free of any barriers arising from attraction or aversion. What a great description of ever-deepening concentration. Having entered into the second jhana, Sariputta understood there is deeper concentration. He pursued this path, meaning the Eightfold Path, and realized deeper concentration. Sariputta, secluded from sensuality and from unskillful mental qualities, with the fading of rapture and remaining equanimous, mindful and alert, sensitive to pleasure in the body. That's such an important line. As opposed to being distracted and clinging to sensual fulfillment, we are our minds have calmed enough that we are simply sensitive to the pleasant, and I'll refer to this in just a moment. We are sensitive enough to recognize a pleasant abiding. We are, another way of describing that is a well-concentrated mind united with its body. It's a pleasant abiding, isn't it? We don't care if the third or fourth or fifth piece of chocolate cake is coming down the pike. We're simply here and present. It's enough. We're fulfilled. Sensitive to pleasure in the body, entered and remained in the third jhana. This third jhana is characterized by the noble ones, meaning ones that have awakened and developed the Eightfold Path, as equanimous, mindful, resting in a pleasant abiding. That's the third jhana. Does everyone feel like they've experienced this at least momentarily? But I would bet. So it's not something that's unachievable, is it? It's simply a direct consequence of right meditation. And the importance of this teaching is simply to recognize it. Yes, you're there. You're in this pleasant abiding. And in the next thought, it might have taken us out of that. That's the difference between the third jhana and the fourth jhana. Sariputta, wise of great, deep, and penetrating discernment, clearly saw the arising, the establishment, and the passing away of these mental qualities present in the third jhana. He noticed how these qualities arose, came into play, and vanished. Having entered in the third jhana, equanimous, a pleasant abiding, the qualities of concentration, sensory contact, feelings, perceptions, intentions, consciousness, desire, decision, persistence, mindfulness, equanimity, and attention were recognized one after another. Sariputta remained free of the attraction or aversion in regard to these qualities. He remained independent, detached, released, dissociated, and free of any barriers arising from attraction or aversion. Having entered into the third jhana, Sariputta understood there is deeper concentration. He pursued this path and realized deeper concentration. Furthermore, with the abandoning of joy and distress, and with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, Sariputta entered and remained in the fourth jhana. Let me read that again. Furthermore, with the abandoning of joy and distress, another way of saying that is free of any craving for or clinging to anything. And with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, same thing. We're not seeking anything different than simply what's occurring, simply resting in this pleasant abiding. Sariputta entered and remained in the fourth jhana. The fourth jhana is characterized by the purity of equanimity and refined mindfulness. Again, it's just a more pure or more developed level of the third jhana. And it's developed how? By continuing with meditation, with the right meditation within the framework of the Eightfold Path. The Buddha continues, there is no evaluation regarding pleasure or pain. Sariputta, wise of great, deep, and penetrating discernment, clearly saw the arising, the establishment, and the passing away of these mental qualities present in the fourth jhana. He noticed how these qualities arose, came into play, and vanished. Having entered in the fourth jhana, established in equanimity, abandoning or from evaluating pleasure and pain, an internal calm, a pleasant abiding, concentration, sensory contact, feelings, perceptions, intentions, consciousness, desire, decision, persistence, mindfulness, equanimity, and attention were recognized one after another. Excuse me. Sariputta remained free of attraction or aversion in regards to these qualities. He remained independent, detached, released, dissociated, and free of any barriers arising from attraction or aversion. So the Buddha teaches 4 levels of meditative absorption. In other words, he doesn't teach a 5th or a 6th or a 9th or a 1,000,000th or any of that. Once we have attained and recognized this 4th level of jhana, there's yet deeper concentration. But we've established this pleasant abiding as the recognition of a measure of concentration that will only continue to deepen as we cultivate that. I got a great question from an online student 1.5 or 2 years ago, and it put me back on my heels because I never got the question before or thought about it. He said, why did the Buddha keep meditating after he awakened? Why would he? Because it's a pleasant abiding. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I'm going to read my comments here. The 4th jhana is simply a deepening level of concentration and resulting pleasant abiding that remains at peace no matter what arises. This pleasant abiding is the defining characteristic of a well-concentrated mind having integrated the Eightfold Path, the Buddha's words. Having entered into the 4th jhana, Sariputta understood there is deeper concentration. He pursued this path and realized there is deeper concentration. I'm going to skip that in my commentary. Furthermore, Sariputta abandoned self-identification with physical form. Maybe I shouldn't have skipped that because it's necessary to put this into context. My commentary. Sariputta studied with some of the same teachers Siddhartha had and now realized that these other dharmas only, I use the word dharma as a, see you, Judy.
Hi, thank you.
Glad you made it. I use the word dharma to distinguish teachings that are different than the Buddha's Dhamma, whether it's modern or during the Buddha's time. Sariputta studied with some of the same teachers Siddhartha had and now realized that these other dharmas only continue a mind disengaged from its body and continuing self-referential fabrications, supporting ongoing ignorance of 4 noble truths by establishing itself in imaginary non-physical realms. The following part of the Buddha's narrative describes Sariputta recognizing and abandoning these fabricated states just as he had previously done with these other fabricated states, one after another. The Buddha studied with, there's 2 teachers in particular he mentions, Alara Kalama and Udeka Ramaputta, who both taught variations of the Vedas, the precursor to modern Hinduism, whose ultimate goal was, in Alara Kalama's teachings, the establishment in infinite consciousness or infinite space, in Udeka Ramaputta's teachings, the establishment in neither perception nor non-perception. Go ahead and figure that one out. And the Buddha mastered these very quickly and realized that these were just distracted, fabricated states. And you think about establishing yourself in infinite space or infinite consciousness or in a dimension of neither perception or non-perception. Where are you establishing yourself? Outside of your body, in an imaginary plane of existence. It's another form of severe asceticism, and I won't get into that complete explanation of that, but it is, when you think about it, it's kind of obvious that that's just another form of asceticism. But it's a mind that is detached from its body and distracted towards something that is based in imagination and unreality, a kind of a non-dual way of looking at the world too. The Buddha continues, furthermore, Sariputta abandoned self-identification with physical form, abandoned self-identification with external forms, with perceptions of aversion, and perceptions of aversion disappeared. Now Sariputta perceives a dimension of, now he's getting in, there he's describing Sariputta recognizing and abandoning these imaginary states that he was taught by the same teachers that taught Siddhartha before he became Buddha. Sariputta perceives a dimension of infinite space, Sariputta entered and remained in this dimension of infinite space. The qualities present in the dimension of infinite space, the perception of the dimension of infinite space, concentration, sensory contact, feelings, etc., that same list, were recognized one after another. And then similarly with the dimensions of nothingness, infinite consciousness, and neither perception or non-perception, went through the same process. He noticed how these qualities arose, came into play, and vanished. They're all simply temporary states, rooted in fabrication. Sariputta remained free of attraction or aversion in regards to these qualities. He remained independent, detached, released, dissociated, and free of any barriers arising from attraction or aversion. Having abandoned the perception of the dimensions of infinite space, the dimensions of nothingness or emptiness, as is very common today, the infinite consciousness and neither perception nor non-perception, Sariputta understood there is deeper concentration, meaning beyond all those fabricated states. He pursued this path and realized deeper concentration. Furthermore, Sariputta, having abandoned the perception of the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, and entered and remained in the cessation of perception and feelings. In other words, not using his perceptions rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths or his feelings arising from those fabrications to define a self. He abandoned all of that. Excuse me, my commentary. Excuse me. Sariputta now understands that the foolishness of the ordinary and common distraction of attempting to establish the self in non-physical realms. Sariputta has recognized one fabricated mind state after another and is now free of perceptions or reactions rooted in views ignorant of Four Noble Truths. The Buddha continues. Upon this realization, the qualities of a mind arising in, meaning or grasping after, cessation, greed, aversion, and delusion were completely abandoned. Fully mindful of his attainment, meaning we know it when we've attained it, fully mindful of his attainment, he regarded the impermanence of all of these past qualities. They arise, they become experienced, and they pass away. Much like Kandana realized when he first heard the Buddha's teachings in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, declaring all conditioned things that arise are subject to cessation. They pass away. My commentary. Sariputta has attained a profound and penetrative understanding of three marks of existence and has developed a wake and right view. The Buddha continues. Sariputta remained independent, detached, released, dissociated, and free of any barriers arising from attraction or aversion. He now understood there is no deeper concentration from an awakened point of view. He pursued this path and realized there is no deeper concentration. Meaning, just like that question, he continued his practice and simply reaffirmed his profound and deep understanding. This is a concentrated mind. The Buddha continues, if any person were to speak rightly and with skill, were to say Sariputta has attained mastery and perfection of noble virtue, noble concentration, and noble wisdom, Sariputta has attained mastery and perfection of the threefold noble eightfold path and has attained noble release. If any person were to speak rightly and with skill, were to say Sariputta is born of the Buddha's words. In this way, he is the Buddha's son, his offspring. Sariputta is born of the Dhamma, has become awakened from the Dhamma. His inheritance is not of worldly things. His inheritance is my Dhamma. Beautiful line. Sariputta, my friends, has taken the wheel of Dhamma set rolling by me, and he keeps it rolling in authenticity. This is what was said by the great teacher. Those gathered were delighted by his words. The end of the sutta. Thank you. Isn't it a marvelous sutta? And the depth that it conveys touches on every theme of the Dhamma, but most importantly, it gives us clear direction as to what we're doing during meditation. Deepening concentration and nothing else, no matter what arises. So any questions related directly to the sutta, and we'll just go around the room. Well, good to see you this morning. What do you think the second time you heard this weekend?
It gets more brilliant.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say is, I think this sutta deserves to be in, like you do the three, you do them on the retreat, the three basic suttas that was taught.
Oh, yeah.
not as soon as the Buddha wrote, but his first 3 sutras, it deserves to be like tagged on to the end of those 3 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it will. Yeah, I was thinking about where to incorporate into the retreats. So
it's that quality. It's it's really, really good.
yeah,
And
it is
to
remarkable.
speak to it speaks to everything, how we get caught up in even all the things that you just mentioned, and that list could go on. I mean, that's not the entire list. We can always add to that list, how we get caught up in our own thoughts and develop ourselves from just even decision making and all that sort of stuff. We just, I just think it really is a wonderful, wonderful sutta, and I'm glad I've listened to it twice. I would listen to it again and get more out of it again. There's so much in there, I'm sure. Yeah. I think I've realized in my own meditation that making the connection between when your mind does settle, when you are meditating, your mind does settle, and you are focused on your breath and you focus within your body, it's that moment that you get peace. It's almost one triggers the other. And if you're very mindful of your thoughts and your feelings when you are meditating, that when you become one with your body, you also become peaceful inside. Yeah. And that's as far as I get with meditation. I don't know which jhana that is.
That's the pleasant abiding, isn't it?
Yes, that's the pleasant abiding. Yeah. And if you are mindful when you're meditating, you can feel it, you can experience it. So that's all.
Thank you. You got me almost jumping off my seat, because that's why the Buddha taught this meditation method and taught us to recognize how to recognize it through recognizing the jhanas, and a substitute for it doesn't do the same thing, doesn't it? Anytime that we use a concept such as, well, no, one that might be common is to meditate on spiritual friendship, rather than hear a sutta on spiritual friendship and use that as a teaching. You can't help but objectify yourself as a spiritual friend. Yeah. And that's a fabrication, isn't it? Yeah. And anytime there's a fabrication, there's stress. Even in I can't remember the famous sutta, when there's stress, when there's desire, there's fear. When there's fear, there's stress. When we're desiring after something, to establish myself, just to use that example, as a wonderful spiritual friend, and let's talk about it, let's have a class about what it means. I've created desire. And even if it's not recognized, because of desire, there's fear and there's stress. And it's not because of the subject matter, it's because of the fabrication underlying the subject matter. Rather than using meditation as it's intended to deepen concentration, because a well-concentrated mind who has established a pleasant abiding is free of all of that and won't go chasing after any of those things. It won't fall into the compulsive need to provide something instead of a concentration practice, which is so common, and I know it from direct experience. The Buddha taught this too, because of his own direct experience. That'll become even more clear. Next week, there's going to be a couple of talks. The next 2 weeks of classes, meaning 2 Tuesday classes and 2 Saturday classes, are going to be on the Anupada Sutta, where the Buddha goes into detail his actual striving and the paths that he took to develop awakening, and the things that he found were simply distractions along the way to be recognized. And they're just as relevant today as they were back during the Buddha's time, and it gets into that. Thank you. Jen, good to see you this morning. Glad you made it. Too. We've missed you.
Yeah, I know. I missed you too. just thinking about how, I don't know if I can put it in words, but how in this sutta he directs you in meditating, directs you in what you should be focusing on in order to deepen your concentration. And then when he lists all of the things that your brain is capable of,
Yeah.
It kind of points out how, you can choose those things. You choose to evaluate, and you choose to be precise, and you can improve those qualities of mind, and your brain will improve those qualities of mind for you. But the first step is for you to choose that quality of mind to improve, and then your brain will kind of take over for you. And
Yeah.
practice precision, and practice evaluation, and practice ruminating, and practice. So if you're doing it, and this is the other part that I kind of got out of it, is that if you're doing anything other than you're using any of those mental qualities, if you're choosing to practice any of those mental qualities, then it should only be what you need to be doing right now, and what you've chosen to do right now.
Yes.
And so if you're meditating, you choose to concentrate on your breath.
Yeah.
And you continue to practice and make that choice. So that if you're doing other things, that's not what you're doing right now. So you don't practice that. And you come back to concentration.
Yeah. So what's the only choice you have in meditation?
Concentrate on your breath.
Yeah.
And
That's the whole point of it.
right.
And you would think that would be enough for somebody to say, just concentrate on your breath.
Yeah.
But it's not, is it?
No, you need to know. It's like you kind of need to know that all the other things that happen that your brain does is not what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
So those things they're not it. So that's somehow helpful. And then it's also helpful off your cushion, because if you are evaluating or judging or being precise or ruminating on something that you are not currently doing, and it is not, it's distracted. It's not concentrated. It's not clear. It's not skillful. And I don't like to even say it that way, because it sounds like I'm judging it, but it's choose to come back to what you're doing, even if it's not meditation. If you're not meditating right now, choose to come back to this email that you're writing. Choose to come back to the dishes that you're doing. Choose, because whatever else is happening is not practicing what you're doing right now.
Yeah. That's such a great example of developing concentration, and what happens, and the resistance that a conditioned mind has to not want to do that, to focus on, I'm going to focus on persistence now, or meditate on whatever. And it seems like that's a good thing to do, when it's simply more distraction, no matter what it might be. And to be able to see that, Jen, is really remarkable. I mean, that's the whole point, to recognize anything within a meditation practice that takes away from deepening concentration. Come back to the sensation of breathing. And notice, and the other important teaching that you just said is to notice that it's working, that my concentration is deepening. How do I know? Because I have these 4 levels to measure myself against. And notice that none of these levels, we've all agreed and we've all experienced, they're not something that is only there for advanced super meditators. They're what every meditator who's engaging in right meditation feels, experiences, I should say. And they're simply there to be recognized. None of these suttas on jhana are instruction for meditation, are they? They're simply what to be mindful of what's occurring in right meditation. And the other side of that would be, if you're not noticing these, then look at your meditation practice, because it's probably not shamatha vipassana meditation within the framework of the Eightfold Path. Thank you. Anthony, good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Great talk.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I agree.
see the jhanas as kind of a lesson to be careful of what goes right in meditation.
Yeah.
Because, I know, like, if I get, aches or a body sensation that's negative, it makes it harder to meditate, but the jhanas make it pleasurable. And it's just equally as dangerous, because if you're a goal-seeking person, you can go into the meditation with the intent that I'm going to go into a deep jhana, I'm going to really enjoy this, and you lose track of what's really important about the meditation.
Yeah.
And in a way, when we're talking about chocolate cake and addiction, you can actually, I think, become addicted to meditation if your goal is to get in there and have the most, to be the person who hits the highest jhana.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of the people, the real experienced meditators, it's sort of taboo to even talk about the levels of jhana or where they go, because it takes the emphasis off what's really important about meditation, and then it becomes a form of bragging in a way.
Especially if you leave it at you explain jhanas as the fourth jhana is a goal to achieve, rather than something to recognize,
Right.
as something that there's something past that, as the Buddha teaches. It's not the ultimate goal. It's the ultimate. It's not even the ultimate. It's a level to recognize that your meditation practice is right meditation. That's all. And everybody, and one of the reasons why I teach, and in fact, I'm teaching it right now, is because as a sangha, we have developed as a sangha well enough to really understand that the point of meditation is to deepen concentration, and everybody does it if you're doing it correctly. It's no big deal. Nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, because you wouldn't, on the surface, you wouldn't think it's so bad to enjoy the jhanas and want them to continue, because I'm meditating, and it shows that I'm concentrating on my breath, because I can't feel this way without that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's bad to experience it, but simply in fact, it's important to recognize that you've established a pleasant abiding through your own efforts. Again, this is not something that's bestowed on us because I've meditated for so long and God gave me this pleasant abiding. I've developed it myself, and that's important to recognize it, but without any self-identification, meaning that you're not using it you're past the evaluation stage of I'm a wonderful person because of look at what I'm doing here. It's simply a recognition that through right meditation, I've been able to establish a pleasant abiding, free of the need for it to be any different, or for anybody else to notice it, for that matter, including myself. It works. That's all.
Yeah, but you can't do the meditation with the intention to achieve that.
Well, I don't. That's kind of a slippery slope. I think you can. I mean, there's such a thing called chanda, skillful desire, that helps us keep focused. And so there is a goal to the Buddha's Dhamma, isn't it? It's to awaken, and there's a path to awaken. And another reason why we need an eightfold path is so that we don't fall back into conceit and eye making as part of our Dhamma practice. It simply provides the direction towards the ultimate goal of awakening. But there's certainly a purpose to this. There's an achievable goal that we should be striving for. And that helps. That's an aspect of right effort too, isn't it? That we're doing what we can do, and developing right mindfulness to carry us to the ultimate culmination of this, which is awakening. It's not something that just happens because we're steady meditators, or because you listen to that guy in Frenchtown once a week. It's not that. It's actually developing an Eightfold Path that has a purpose and a goal, which is to awaken. And also we have to understand what awakening means.
It's also an important lesson in impermanence and not getting caught up in clinging and craving.
Yeah.
I saw it as very important to me today because I'm sad because I lost a good friend to cancer, and I had to make the tough decision. Her husband was sort of like not trying to talk me out of it, but telling me you don't know what you're going to see here. And I rushed over there when I heard, because she kind of kept it secret, and now she died a couple of hours after I left, but I got to see her. And boy, to see somebody, in their last breaths, ravaged by cancer, was just horrible. And it was hard for me to sleep because I kept seeing her face, and she didn't look anything like her.
Yeah.
And I went because I thought the only reason that I don't want to go is because I'm protecting myself, because of what I might see.
Yeah.
And I was really glad I went, but I've been feeling very sad. And this sutta made me realize that just like happy things like jhanas are not always going to stay pleasurable. Sadness isn't always going to stay sadness.
Yeah, but it's appropriate for you right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It would be inappropriate for you to insist that you're not going to be sad. How could I be sad because I have this great Dhamma practice? That's not it, and it's not something that people should look for. But whenever you see anyone who dies from a long illness and you're there at the end, there's no way to even describe it, except that there's, for most of us, there's going to be great sadness there, which is completely, it's just appropriate. So the Dhamma doesn't take us away from our feelings, which, some people, especially people beginning to get an understanding of where this is going, feel like you end up as an automaton where you don't feel anything. It's really just the opposite. You gain the ability to feel deeply, but appropriately for what's occurring. Yeah. And you don't need it to be any different because you understand that.
Yeah, and I realized that you can't, death is just like birth and every other life event. In some cases, it can be very pleasurable, and in some cases, it can be very not pretty.
Yeah.
And you don't really get to pick how it's going to be. It's the way it unfolds.
Yeah, but even in a situation like that, there's the as long as we're not attached to physical life. I mean, that should be. We should keep that going no matter what. When someone who's very, very ill finally passes, there is a great peace, isn't there? Too, because I'm referring to my mother now, and when she finally passed, it was awful, and it was a great relief. Not because I don't have to be not because I don't have to see her suffering, so she's not suffering anymore. That's just practical, and that's part of life. In order to have, you can. I know I'm not. This isn't an original saying. Life is a death sentence, isn't it? And all of us should understand that at a profound level, that we don't know, mindfulness of the here, we don't know when the cow's going to get us. And if the most important thing to me is to awaken, that helps keep my Dhamma practice focused, doesn't it? Because I sure would like to accomplish the task and reach the goal before the cow gets me.
Yeah. It also makes you realize how fast time goes. We became friends 30 years ago, and it just seems like things slip away, and then families happen, and you don't see each other, and then the next thing you know, one of you is dying.
Yeah. Oh,
you realize, wow, you've got to sometimes just take a breath and slow down and make time.
It really is the blink of an eye. It's phew. It's a great sutta, a great discussion, and it relates to as we just started discussion, it relates to our entire life, doesn't it? And all the mundane experiences, and how much how important it is to be well concentrated for our own lives. Remarkable. The Dana dinner is the November 20th. It's on. We've invited the town officials and the first responders to the Galasso fires. So there's probably going to be it'll be a larger group. I don't know how big. If everybody shows up, it's going to be rather large. If you get those free turkeys that you get from like ShopRite Price Clubs, I think they're called, and you're not going to use them, please take them and get a hold of me, and we'll donate them, get them down to Love and Oven so they can cook them up for the dinner. And there's a few things that I could use some help with. I put a list on the website. One is some folding tables. Jane said she's going to take care of the plastic plates and the cups. Soda water and ice too. If anybody can get any of those things, just let me know and I'll take them off the list. And all the info is on the website. So hope you can. Well, you know it. You've all been there, right? So,
How many tables do you need?
probably like 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Please let me know if you can, and I'll take it off the list. I think that's it. I think I mentioned we're going to start a teacher training to learn how to do what I do early next year, and it's going to progress through the year, and there'll be a formal time because of Jen's suggestion in the summer of actual classes, but it'll entail about a year's worth of things, mostly participation in the sangha here, and then leading to teaching some classes. So we're going to start that next year because the cow's going to get me one of these days, and we need some continuity.
Thank you, John.
Looking for a Batman wants a Robin.
Yeah. All right. So let's.
Many Robins.
That's a great idea.
Oh,
I always kind of thought that, well, Mac's going to continue, and he certainly could, but it's a lot, It really is kind of a full-time job if just one person's going to do it, but with a group of people, it isn't. But I had an online student sent me an email. This is just before the last retreat. He said, so is there anybody around that's going to keep your thing going when you're gone? Geez, I never thought about that. And he says, I'll throw my hat into the ring. So that got me thinking of doing some teacher training. So I think we have what is, as the Buddha says in the Anapanasati Sutta, what we've developed here is certainly rare in the world, and it's something worthwhile, I think, to try to keep going. So that's what we're going to do. But today we'll finish with metta as we always do. So again, find your relaxed meditation posture. Gently close your eyes. Gently close your mouths and take a few moments to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace.